So why does everybody that has a PhD in academia actually act like they're better than you? This is a really tough question, and I want to try to answer that. I think I'm uniquely qualified. I have a PhD, but at the same time, I grew up in a family that was not academic at all. We were not that type of family. I was the first in my family to go away, and I deeply understand this. Um, and I've both felt it in the way that you're thinking about it, and I've been doing this long enough, this whole reciprocity project long enough that I think I'm uniquely positioned to talk about it a little bit more openly than others because I think people are really afraid to talk about these kind of things. So the key thing I want you to think about, and I think two sides of this, there's two sides of the story. The first side is you yourself is asking this question. And then the other side is everybody else that you're looking at, right? I think one thing that you're going to have to realize is that, um, so let's start off with everybody else because I think that that is a little bit more, it's a little bit more easier to digest for all of us to think about everybody else. I want you to think about who do you actually know that actually has a PhD. What you're going to find out is that it's pretty rare, right? And there's going to be lots and lots of people that you know that actually don't have one. And there's probably one or two people that you've ever met in your ever life that has had one, and they may have an air of confidence. I'm assuming if you're listening to this at this moment, they probably did have an air of confidence. And often, so for that's what I want you to select on. I want you to realize that there's a massive selection problem here. It may turn out that you run into people that are just the sweetest people in the world and have a PhD, and you would never know, right? And in that experience, you're going to be asking different questions at that moment. But for those of you who are following and listening and hear this, it's likely that you bumped into somebody that had an air of confidence. And that air of confidence often, at least in my experience that I've run into, is often just, and it's me too. I have done this as well, is um, first of all, it's probably the wrong situation at the wrong time, right? Like there is a stress moment, right? Perhaps that they are giving a presentation, perhaps that they have to put on an air of a little bit more of this sort of confidence feel that that we all have to project. And sometimes in these experiences, I'm learning as I get older. But when I was younger, I sort of didn't. I was like told a lot that I have to act more confident, right? And so you try to project that you're going to be more confident, right? Like that is a thing. But as I get older, I'm embracing the complete opposite. I think I talked about this very recently on this podcast. Is that I'm trying to act the complete opposite, where I'm trying to be less confident because I have more gray hairs who are going to bump into me, and I'm well aware. And given, I am just going to call it out. I'm a white male. I understand the power structures that often exist. And if I come off as like projecting confidence, I come off as a complete um, d bag, right? Like nobody's gonna want to be around me. So I understand that, right? But a lot of people don't understand this. They don't understand cultural cues. Often, many of us are very much introverts because that's why we get into the profession. But it's not only that we are introverts when we begin, but the profession makes us introverts. So you can imagine our life is extraordinarily isolated, right? Like if you have this sort of profession, you're very, very isolated. And then every once in a while, you're forced into this very, very stressful situation where you got to speak in front of a whole bunch of people and truth tell or be an expert or whatever, like all this garbage, right? Um, when you're doing that, it's this high stress situation, and it's not like it's a fluid thing that you go through where your life as you're talking in front of a bunch of people, all that kind of stuff, or that you're naturally kind of a bubbly person. A lot of us are very much introverts because that's the nature of it. It's either sort of forced, it's either sort of inbred in us, right? Nature or nurture, that over time that we become more isolated and we become more introverted. So there's that's going on. I want you to realize that it's a lot of insecurities that we often have that we're projecting, and it's kind of like the one person that you might speak to that you're like, oh, you're either like way too high and on and like come across as like ooh, or the complete opposite. We just don't know how to act in social situations, right? Because we kind of have less experience actually doing that, right? I think that that is deeply in the profession. I think that that is well understood. Um, and that we come across. But the other thing to realize is that you have a selection bias when you're listening to this right now. Like, don't generalize across everybody. You're going to run into very sweet people that are in the profession as well. But I do think that there is a preponderance of more people. If we're looking at odds, give you an estimate, right? 60% of people probably come across as too overconfident and jerky if you have a PhD, and then 40% are just sweet, right? Like, I think it's probably somewhere around there. Okay, so that's that, right? That's thinking about other people, and I want you to really sort of process that and think about what I'm saying. I am very sympathetic to where you're coming from. The other thing, and this has taken me a tremendous amount of time for myself, and I'm still working on it. It's a reflection of me thinking that I am somehow inferior, right? Thinking that um, because of my position in society and the position of where I stand, that I am letting some of that stuff out, and I'm processing that in a way that I'm trying to put up my guard, right? I'm trying to sort of say, oh, I didn't like that experience, and I'm going to judge that experience because this is the way I feel about it at this given time, and about who I actually am. And I want you to really think about that. Is like, this is this is challenging for all of us to deal with, right? And I told you I came up in a family that it wasn't our thing to hobnob with all of the elites in society, right? Like, that really was not a thing. In fact, we would often talk about that. That was a thing of like, oh, like doctors, woo, um, lawyers, woo, all that. And I want you to realize that one of the things that my aunt used to say, and I think it was very much a defense mechanism because we grew up in a very, very poor family. Um, looking at the time, we're sort of, we're making ends meet. We did okay, but in the grand scheme of things, we were probably lower to middle class. As I got through high school, at the end, we were probably more middle class because my parents were very frugal. They were very, very good with their money, and they did okay. And I would say that they're pretty good at that, in terms of dealing with this. We had one family income. There were six kids, um, and it was just my dad working in a blue collar job. So completely understand. They were just freaking good with money by the time I got to high school. I paid my way through school. They supported my first semester, I believe, or first year, helped support me, which I'm deeply grateful for. But at the same time, I understand. I am deeply understanding where this is coming from. Um, so, what I'd suggest is listen to the good, wise advice of my aunt. She probably still says I hadn't spoken to my aunt in a while. Um, Everybody puts on their pants the same way. Everybody everybody goes on the toilet the same way. She would say it a little less gracefully. Everybody goes on the toilet the same way. And I think if you remember that You just, reflect on that, right? Like, we're all humans. We have a sense of humanity. And given in, crisis situations, we have a sense of humanity. Many of us actually do. Um, that I want you to know that, hey, we're all human. We're all doing the best that we possibly can. Many of us started out, and if you look at the sociology, right? So sociology is the study of essentially groups of people, and looking at, just kind of more demographics of where we actually stand, like age and things like that, and how we come about. If you just look at demographically, academics or upper status come from upper status families, but that doesn't mean um, that you can't, progress and go through those experiences. And what I want you to reflect is, in order for you to progress and get through those experiences, you have to be very forgiving of yourself. And I know that this sounds really strange, but I think it is a lot of forgiveness of yourself, of saying, I'm okay. Um, I'm going to get up. I'm going to do my thing. And I'm going to be okay today. And I'm going to forgive myself for any social goofs. Um, I watched a great movie that sort of reflects on this. This is J.D. Vance movie. He wrote a book about it. Hey, I'm not political, or I am political. I stand for justice and all that kind of stuff. But I want you to, if you watch that movie, it's about J.D. Vance's life, and he's sitting there looking at, how do you, it's a quintessential story of growing up in a family that was much like mine. Um, how do you eat with a bunch of forks at a very fancy event? You don't know what the hell you're doing, and so you just have to have a lot of forgiveness for yourself. You're gonna make a lot of social goofs and all that kind of stuff, but you say, nuts to this. I'm gonna go and do well at any given time, and love myself. And I think if you reflect on that, it's more of a reflection on yourself, um, and saying, I'm good enough. I'm going to do okay. I'm going to walk into the situation and just be like, meh, whatevs. Whatevs salad, right? Like, you go into it, and you kind of feel a little bit more comfortable. And I want you to sort of think about that. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.